Moving on to the next item, it's the program for the day, examining voter turnout in Ypsilanti Township, Pittsfield Township, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor. I'd like to briefly introduce the speakers. The format will be each speaker will have 10 minutes. Several of them will have PowerPoint presentations. After all the speakers have made their presentations, then there will be time for questions and comments. I'd like to ask all panelists who are not speaking to keep their mics off. It prevents, you could say, noise in the background. The speakers will be in order: Jim Dries, Chair of the Washtenaw County Board of Public Works, West Liberty Information LLC, and also retired Washtenaw County Chief Deputy Clerk. He's going to be giving us an overview of the challenge, so to speak. Next, we'll hear from Representative Yousef Rahbi again. Then from Alex Thomas, a West Willow community advocate, who also spoke at our last meeting. And then from the WCDP's own Precinct Organizing Committee, Theresa, Reid, and I believe also Janet Cannon will participate in that presentation. So, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Eli. Let me just bring up a little slideshow via sharing the screen. There we have it, and go to run it from the beginning. There we go. Okay, I'm going to talk about voter turnout and give you some historical information. And I'll endeavor to keep this under 10 minutes because I see we're running a few minutes behind schedule. What I'm going to do is review the 2020 results for Ann Arbor City, Ypsilanti City, Pittsfield Township, and Ypsilanti Township, and use calculated recency of verification to understand the differences and why some turnout numbers for different municipalities are so different. Then we'll take a look at some older results and then identify, one way, I think, to work on voter turnout. This slide shows you voter turnout percentages for November 2020. On the left-hand side, we've got voter turnouts for those 4 municipalities among all registered voters. That's everybody in those municipalities on the qualified voter file. On the right-hand side, we have voter turnout rates for people who had been verified as being active in the last 48 months. You can see that Ann Arbor City is just over 50%. Ypsilanti City is just over 50% turnout among all of our registered voters. But when we look at those people who were more recently verified, at least in the last 48 months, registration approaches 80% and 75% in Ypsilanti City. One way we explain this is to say, well, in the 2 cities, we have these big universities and people come into them and stay for 4 years or so. And then they move away. Maybe they move out of state or away at any rate. And the QVF doesn't pick up any of those changes of addresses or moving out of state. Another look at this, though, is to take a look at the percent of voters in those municipalities who have been active for 49 months or more. In Ann Arbor City, that's 26%. In Ypsilanti, it's 29%, but both in Pittsfield and Ypsilanti Townships, the percentages are significantly lower. Again, Ann Arbor City and Ypsilanti City, because of their populations and housing stock and so forth, tend to be a bit more transient than Pittsfield Township and Ypsilanti Township, where more people live in single family homes. Again, the inactivity may reflect out-of-state moves. It may reflect morbidity, disinterest, and so forth. And then when we look at voter turnout by municipality and the months since the people were last active, we're seeing, better than 90% among people who had been active in the last 6 months. And that includes people who voted in the last primary or registered to vote in that time period. It drops off all the way down to the right-hand side here, where people are 49 months or more. And we're seeing less than 10%, even less than 5% among people who were 49 months or more. We're also seeing in particularly Ypsilanti Township that there's a bump, that the township exceeds what we might expect over that time period. And if we take a look at November 2008, when Barack Obama was a candidate, we see that same pattern. Ypsilanti Township, which had voted those 49 months or more people who had voted at 5 and under 10% in prior elections and following elections, is voting at those people are achieving a 25% turnout. That's interesting. And what it's saying to me is that there's a population of people who have been inactive over time in recent general elections, but because the election in 2008 and 2012 pulled out their interest or reflected their interests, they turned out to vote. And that's particularly evident in Ypsilanti Township. So what I would suggest in order to increase your turnout, campaigns could spend some resources looking at inactive registered voters. There are reasons why these folks don't vote. Some of them are not here anymore, but others may not have an interest in what's going on. Get out there and identify people who are still here, people who answer their phones and people who are at home during door-to-door. And then work to persuade and activate these people through personal contact. And finally, keep really good records and make sure all those folks get out to vote. That's it. I'm going to close my screen share. And Eli, you can move on to the next person in the barrel.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jim. That's a lot of food for thought. Representative Rahbi.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thanks for having me as part of this panel. I think this is a very important discussion, obviously, to be having right now. And I'll actually keep my portion pretty brief as well, because I do like hearing from all the other panelists and if there's any questions at the end as well. But obviously, some of the things I just want to briefly touch on were, looking at this last election, what were some of the barriers that we saw? What were some of the things that, were of concern that we need to change from a policy perspective? And then bigger picture for the Democratic Party, what are some of the things that we've been hearing and what are some of the things that we need to be focused on? So first of all, in terms of obviously the new voting system that we have in the state of Michigan with passage of Proposal 3 and the ability for people to, vote absentee, and obviously during the pandemic, very interesting and unique time to be a voter in the state of Michigan. But some of the things that we were looking at from a policy level that were of concern to us, and actually the first one I'm going to talk about is something that I actually introduced a bill on, which is the issue of the signature mismatch on ballots. So when you send your absentee ballot in via mail, it arrives at the clerk's office, and when they begin to process those absentee ballots, if your signature on your ballot does not match the signature that they have on the qualified voter file, that becomes an issue for the clerk. Some clerks will actually call the voters, ask them to come in and correct their signature if there is a mismatch. Some clerks don't. It's not a universal across the state of Michigan. And so unfortunately, we saw a number of ballots that were disqualified because of that the voter signature mismatch. That's something that we need to fix. And so I have actually introduced a bill last session to basically mandate that all clerks across the state are required to contact those voters who have that mismatch issue and let them know that there is a mismatch, give them a notice and give them an opportunity to come in and actually correct that mismatch from their ballot. Now, that's really important. The other thing that we're looking at, and obviously this was complicated a little bit by the sort of just terrible lies that our former president was pushing out about the voting process. But one of the other ways that some ballots were not counted was around the issue of when those ballots were received by the clerk's offices. And so there's actually legislation that we've introduced that would require that we actually count ballots that are received after Election Day, as long as they're postmarked by Election Day. And so some states allow this, some states don't. Obviously, it would mean that the election results wouldn't, unofficial results wouldn't be able to be released until after a later date from when they are now. But as we all know, the elections are not certified until a couple of weeks after Election Day anyways. And so there's, in my opinion, we should have plenty of time to receive those ballots that are delayed in the mail due to postal issues, and still be able to count those ballots. But unfortunately, we did have in the state of Michigan a number of ballots. I believe in the August primary, there were, I think the number was like 6,000 ballots that were statewide that were not counted because they were received too late by the clerks. So it's not a massive number of ballots, but it can make a significant difference. And if you compound that with the signature issue, then you're actually adding, I believe it was about 1,000 to 2,000 ballots across the state. So you're getting close to that range of what our former president won the state of Michigan by. And that can make a significant difference. And as you all know, I wouldn't be here but for that one vote victory back in 2010. So every vote does count, and we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to weigh in. But bigger picture, in terms of voter engagement, I think that there's a lot of things that worked really well that we were able to do as the Democratic Party, and there are a lot of things that I think that we need to do better on. And I'll just be kind of blunt about this, because this is an issue that I believe is an ongoing issue for the Democratic Party, and that is that we need to inspire. Part of it is we need to inspire people to vote for us. And that means that we need to stand for something concrete and be willing to actually follow through with that. And really, a lot of that comes back down to the core of who are we as Democrats? Who are we? And when it comes to communities like mine in Ann Arbor and populations of younger voters, of students who are looking at candidates, and for a variety of reasons, they want a candidate to be to have values and to stand up for progressive issues, to fight for working families, to make sure that everybody's getting health care. These are things that we do believe in our core as Democrats, but sometimes we don't do a good job of following through on those things. And so when candidates are putting themselves forward, we need to think about that, I think. And sometimes we approach elections with a mind for moderating our views so that we can attract more people to our party. But that sometimes will alienate people that are, that want our party to be progressive, that want our party to do right by working people. And some voters can and have been feeling alienated by that process. And so, I think putting forward candidates that have strong values, that believe in those things, that are willing to fight for them, and that actually follow through once they're elected and show, like, I wasn't just saying this, now I want to actually do it. For example, I will say that, when I'm on social media and I see the Biden campaign running ads in Ann Arbor about how Biden is not going to ban fracking, that is like just complete. Why would he run ads? They probably didn't geocode it very well, but why would he be running ads in Ann Arbor saying, I'm not going to ban fracking? That's just not a good message in our community. And I was very disappointed to see those types of ads, popping up on social media. That's not helpful. That's not productive. That's not going to get people to turn out to vote. And when we're trying to moderate who we are as Democrats in that way, it's just kind of a weird thing to be pushing to a voting electorate that wants somebody who's progressive, that wants somebody who's going to stand up for the environment, for climate change. And that's just not, that message was not what was coming through. So that's something that we need to work on as Democrats, I think. That's a constant issue that we face, that I face as a progressive Democrat, that we're constantly trying to be the moderates in the room. And that's not going to win over voters, guys. We may pick a few people up on the margins, but we're losing our base, we're losing our core voters. And it's hard to imagine a Democratic Party that's going to proceed and be successful in that way. So I just wanted to put that out there. The other piece of it, though, I do want to say is obviously the Republicans are working on the other end to spread all kinds of voter misinformation. Again, a Facebook ad that I got after the, if you remember, the recommendation was for voters to not mail ballots after within 2 weeks before the election. And within, I think it was like a week before the election, the Republican Party was running ads on social media. And I took a screenshot of it saying basically like mail your ballot, not saying, go drop it off at your clerk's office, but saying put it in the mail. And I think it was a few days before the election. I think it might have even been within 3 days of the election, which obviously like those ballots are not going to get in, but they're running those ads. And clearly Facebook knows that I'm a Democrat. So I felt like the Republican Party was very effective at spreading that misinformation to the people that that are our voters, and putting that out there and confusing people about this new voting process. So we did a really good job, I think, of informing and pushing out the message of how you could get your absentee ballots in a productive way. But I do just want to flag that the Republicans were also effective at spreading misinformation in the days leading up to Election Day. So that's kind of my piece that I wanted to throw in there. And I will hand it back over to the team.
Great. Thank you so much, Representative Rahbi. Alex Thomas is up next. Alex.
Thank you, Eli, and I want to thank the County Democratic Party for having me back again. Well, I was worried when the lineup got mixed up and I was going to have to go after Representative Rahbi. I see why. He said so many great things, and it's an honor to follow him. Thank you, Representative Rahbi. Glad to have you there. If you can, do I have screen share capability here?
Yes, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, great.
Yep, it's working.
I'm gonna make that. And I'm Alex Thomas, West Willow community advocate. West Willow is the largest neighborhood in Ypsilanti Township, so hence the title in this first slide. Why we're here today, I think the party's interested in increasing voter turnout. I'm interested in doing the same thing in Ypsilanti Township. And so many people don't know that Ypsilanti Township's the second largest municipality. That's a lot of voters that aren't showing up, that haven't traditionally been engaged. I hope to try to shed some light on why that is, I think, and also how we can do something about it. We're talking about a strategy and how to increase voter turnout in these areas. And whenever I hear that word strategy, I think of one of my favorite quotes by a business leader, Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And when I was creating this presentation, I immediately thought of, over the summer, I was the county party. I was the outreach person for the northern area of Ypsilanti Township. And I sucked at it. And I sucked at it because I was, as a community advocate for Ypsilanti Township, I was laser-like focused on the issues that affect this area. And in this area, you're talking about the epicenter of the impacts of COVID. You're talking about, MLive had a story about the modern day segregation, the disproportionate amount of housing vouchers that are concentrated in West Willow. From a criminal justice lens, there are just ridiculous disparities in arrest, incarceration rates for different crimes in Ypsi Township. All of those issues are central to West Willow, central to Ypsilanti Township, and are affected in that August primary election. And that's what I was focused on. And the culture aspect, and why I believe I sucked at being the recruiting person for the party, is because the culture of the party is understandably so focused on November, because there's existential issues on the ballot in November. You can't minimize that. But the local issues, all politics are local. And those existential issues that are decided in November, there's an opportunity to impact them locally in August. And that's why I was so focused on that, where that separation is. When you're trying to communicate with people and make that argument, you have to do an education piece and let them know some of the things I'm gonna follow the slide with. So culture eats strategy for breakfast. Think in your own definition of what that word culture means, and I let that set in the back of your mind through the rest of these slides. If you're executing a strategy, you need to know, the rules, the boundaries, the structure. And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about our area. I know I love the city of Ypsilanti. My first time in city council was at PAC 292 as a Cub Scout in '78. I remember Mellencamp's, the Wolverine Diner in Michigan Ave. I'm very passionate about the history of the city. It's very unique, but nevertheless, Ypsilanti Township is 56,000. And that's this pink shaded in area that many people just don't know. 56,000 people, the city of Ypsilanti, 21,000. Geographically, Ypsilanti Township 7 times larger. And I stress this because, we're here, we want to increase voter turnout. I've seen in some of the previous charts and a lot of people's charts, the population isn't there. We don't understand those percentages. And there's always such a conflation of the city of Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township. And we're here at the County Democratic Party. The city of Ypsilanti has a separate city council. The Ypsilanti Board of Trustees runs this pink area here. Those who were elected up for election in August. And if I was, there were our county seats determining. We got the great Justin Hodge that's here today. His election was up. I thought that he represented a difference from the moderate establishment type, more progressive. Representative Rahbi spoke earlier about values-oriented voters, young people, students. That was the candidate that I thought was up on the ballot and that I could communicate to people in Ypsilanti Township why it was so important. Our prosecutor's race and that criminal justice lens, Ypsilanti Township trustees, an opportunity, 63% of Ypsilanti Township voters had voted for cannabis. The previous board of trustees banned it. Those were real issues that were up on the ballot in August. And that's what I could talk about and communicate to people. And it seemed like as the recruiter with the county party so focused on November, I didn't see how through that to authentically connect to those people talking about what they're seeing on MSNBC, not really Fox that much, but just in the general media. They don't talk about Ecorse Road, Michigan Ave on MSNBC. It's not talked about enough here in the area from my limited contact that I've had over the years with the County Democratic Party. If we talk about municipalities, and I think, I believe in the, here, the purpose of the day, we have Pittsfield Township is highlighted also, but I highlighted these particular areas because there's lots of, we're in the post George Floyd, in the midst of COVID, lots of talk about equity. Our county's African-American population. That's why I highlighted these. I'm gonna back up before I get to the African-American population though. If I talk about just poverty, because sometimes those get conflated and as if it's synonymous, but we have a large working class population. We do have a solid, but I wish was much larger, middle to upper middle class by standard definition African-American community. So poverty isn't just an African-American issue. My next slide, the city of Ypsilanti has a 30% poverty rate that represents about 6,000 people that live in poverty. Ypsilanti Township has a 16% poverty rate, but at 56,000 people, that's about 9,000 living in poverty. And they're about 5 minutes away from each other by exits, right? Just adjacent to each other, but separate governments, definitely separate cultures. I spoke earlier about how I love the history and tradition of Ypsilanti City. Ypsilanti Township is not Ypsilanti City, though. We have towards our eastern part a little Canton flavor. We have Belleville School Districts that plays a large part. Lincoln Consolidated School Districts plays a large part. It's 7 times larger geographically. We're different culturally, and there's a specific story going on. And for authentic outreach, that needs to be understood. Now to the African American population, in that equity discussion, 60% of the African Americans in the county live in these 3 municipalities: Ypsilanti Township, the city of Ypsilanti, Superior Township. Pittsfield Township that I have listed there, what's really important in this poverty and African American population conversation, a lot of people have a perception of Pittsfield Township as a bit more affluent than it might be. When you think about driving between Gulfside and 223 and all the apartments like Glacier Hill, Spice Tree, Arbor Way, those are Pittsfield Township. There's lots of engagement can be done in that. I think those young people, students, values-oriented voters, I think a lot of times, in fact, I had a member, a member of the party said to me, well, there's mostly drug dealers in Glacier and Glencoe Hills, like kind of writing it totally off. They're not in leadership or anything, but it represented a sentiment that I think is popular, and that sentiment, it's a misperception of Pittsfield Township. It's an insensitivity and it's just frankly racist attitude towards some areas of the county. And I think that needs to be understood if you're going to do authentic outreach, and because there's so much opportunity there in those areas. This, since we're in the midst of a pandemic, is a map. It's on our county health department's website. It's based, it's from the most recent data is August, but it's the areas in the county most impacted by COVID in terms of infection, hospitalization. This is Ypsi Township area here. And this is the south side of Ypsi in the darker areas. And what's interesting here, one, I'll point out our health officer told me they just don't have the resources to update this. So by census tract, we don't know, it can be found out, but our health department just doesn't have the capacity to tell us right now by census tract where it is up to date. This is as of August. And when we look at this, 48198, 48197 are the zip codes, but 48198 up here, very large area, some of the most affluent areas of Superior Township, very different than Sycamore Meadows, south of Geddes Road, MacArthur Boulevard. 48197, and this is some of the more affluent areas of Ypsi Township. It was a bit surprising to me. South of Ford Lake is 48197 in Ypsi Township. It's also the south side of Ypsi. So those are different demographic areas. In this chart, you're seeing similar, as of August last year, similar COVID rates. And that was a bit surprising because I think when I think of southern Ypsilanti Township, I think of the more affluent area. But you see how COVID impacts there. Another map is, this can be found at Opportunity Washtenaw, and I got the link right there, but it measures the disparities in health, education, job access, economic vitality, neighborhood safety, stability. I've actually, I focus on health, education, and jobs, but you'll see it will overlay these areas, the common areas, with COVID. These are that's West Willow here. I have my chart here. Let's see. This is that's West Willow, Southern Ypsilanti Township, Southern Ypsilanti Township. And this is the south side of Ypsi. So in terms of impact of COVID, jobs, health, education, criminal justice also, I don't have that slide, but those huge disparities in those areas where there's low voter turnout, there's incredible opportunity for connection. Jim McCarger spoke earlier about outreach for vaccination clinics. It was just, I want to thank him here again, U of M students, Joanne McCullum and Adam Burrs with our health department. On very short notice, we really engaged a lot of people, and I'm just so proud of that effort to get all of those vaccinations out. But I'm just even more excited about the future. It was authentic outreach with involving the party, U of M. There was an energy, dynamism in it, and there's just incredible opportunities in other spheres. And by other spheres, I'm talking about in delivering resources. If we start addressing the areas of the county that most need it, the county Democratic Party, we could authentically connect to communities in the area that traditionally have low voter turnout. What would that look like? What we just did in the outreach for the vaccination clinics, that same model can be used to deliver COVID supplies, more vaccination. You can insert any type of authentic outreach and connect to people, not just in November, but address some immediate needs now and start developing authentic relationships with longstanding residents that have, and also the greater part of the community. I can't stress enough, especially in areas like West Willow and high SVI and high disparities, how they're traumatized areas, traumatized economically, traumatized by lack of engagement. In that there's a story in that where groups outside come in and say they want to do sincere outreach. It's a big initial effort. Then it fades out when that individual groups or purposes and goals are achieved. So that's the story in these areas, so that inauthentic outreach, it just taps into that suspicion, keeps people cynical. And a lot of people that I care about and I know that are sincere in this party and on this Zoom, they don't spend the best use of their time. So I didn't time myself. I tried to go as fast as I could. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that is my presentation. Let's deliver some help to areas in need and get some more voters too.
Thank you so much, Ella. We will have a chance for questions and comments from the audience. But next up, we want to hear from the WCDP Precinct Organizing Committee, and that's Theresa, Reid, and I believe she is going to be joined by Janet Cannon. Theresa and Janet.
Hi, everybody. Hang on, let me just get this one in a present mode. It's nice to see you all here. Yes, I'm co-chair of the Precinct Organizing Committee with Janet Cannon. And we have an amazing team, Loretta Codrington, Brian Greminger, Ed Saunders, and Liz Schaefer all work really hard in our regular weekly meetings and in between in order to change the way and strengthen the way the party interacts with our voters, our prospective voters. And I'm hoping to add Alex's name to this list of committee members. So Alex, consider yourself invited, but I'll follow up. Janet and I are both kind of keen on that. So, because we need your wisdom and your insight and your knowledge. So the Precinct Organizing Committee is deploying two major strategies in this off year to build the Democratic electorate. One is precinct delegate development and support, and the other is deep canvassing training. The overall goal of, I'm going to take these one at a time, PD development and support is to significantly increase Democratic turnout neighborhood by neighborhood throughout the county. As you might know, many people know, some people don't, precinct delegates are the first rung elected officials. Our friend Dirk Mayhew had a mock-up of a vote for me card. Is the last name on the ballot. It's like, literally the last person you'll vote for, but vote for me. That's what a precinct delegate is. They're said to be the backbone of the party, but we've been kind of lacking in support and direction for PDs for some time. So we're working this year to correct that. to build a program to provide the support and inspiration and guidance that precinct delegates need to do a great job. So one of the ways we're doing that or starting to do that is with regular meetings of PDs. This is upcoming. We got we spent some time on the vaccination effort. So we're back on track with starting to hold regular meetings of PDs so they can get to know each other, kind of form a group identity, share strategies. We're thinking about doing regular individual communications with voters in our own precinct. So it's neighborhood based. Set goals like what percent increase do we want in Democratic turnout in this precinct, for instance, for each precinct delegate. And then we're thinking we can offer exclusive strategy conversations with elected officials for precinct delegates. We're also recruiting. Right now, we only have filled about a third of available precinct delegate seats. The more PDs we have, the stronger we are. So we will be doing outreach to lapsed precinct delegates and also searching for new candidates from among the precinct organizing committee's precinct organizers. Some of you, many of you on the call are precinct organizers, now known as precinct volunteers, because precinct organizer was a little intimidating as a title and as a job description. But we're reaching out and thinking who among the precinct volunteers would be a good precinct delegate. And we're integrating precinct volunteers as we go in any case. And then the last big point on PD development and support is providing resources, which will include postcards and door hangers and photo IDs. And I forgot to mention labels or ID, stamps, like address stamps for people to use, office support for printing of flyers and so forth, and other assets as we start to build this cohort and identify what the needs are. The other big piece that the precinct organizing committee is doing is deep canvassing. Our overall goal is to increase Democratic voter turnout by strengthening communication and bonds between us and de-leaning infrequent voters. We're focusing on the infrequent voters right now. I want to call out what Yousef was saying, certainly about, having candidates and activists who are really acting from a deep place of values, not somebody who, not people that kind of say, well, we need to play down race and class, or we need to play down race and focus on white rural voters, for instance. We don't want to alienate anybody. Well, how about if we focus on what we actually believe in and what we know to be true? So the deep canvassing involves values-based empathic conversations and story sharing with prospective voters. The story sharing is key because the canvasser who's making the outreach is digging deep in her or his own experience and emotions to come up to share a story that relates to the issue that is under discussion. We're working with a national organization called People's Action and their statewide affiliate, Michigan People's Campaign. People's Action is the organization that really, you might have seen news. I mean, there's been a lot of news about the deep canvassing, and People's Action is the organization that's really nationally gotten that going, is responsible for most of it. We did complete the first set of trainings last Sunday. Actually, I said 30 is more like 40 trainees, mostly from Washtenaw County, but several from Western Michigan and the UP. We were so thrilled to see them coming. So that's cool. And we're in the process right now of planning how to integrate the deep canvassing as a strategy. Here's a screenshot of these wonderful people who engaged in the deep canvassing training. This was just from last week. Deep canvassing is based in the race class narrative. A lot of you have heard of the race class narrative. If you haven't, you need to read up on it. It was developed by Berkeley law professor Ian Haney Lopez, who's got two critical books. One, the first that I'm referring to is Dog Whistle Politics, which was published maybe 5 years ago, I think, calling out well, what used to be dog whistles from the Republicans about race. Now it's not, it's just bullhorns, but that was dog whistle politics. And then Merge Left is his current book, published a year or two ago. Very important research and analysis of the impact of the race class narrative, of acknowledging the fact, well, here it is, calls out the fact that the wealthy few and their elected Republicans intentionally divide the rest of us on the basis of race and immigration status to gain more power for themselves. And that seems, honestly, when you talk, I mean, it seems like so obvious, but we have been, as Democrats, afraid to talk about it. And we're not anymore. We are totally on that. So deep canvassing, this is probably more detail than I should get into right now, but it begins and ends with a 1 to 10 scale. So it's how likely are you to vote in the next election, for instance, or support Prop 3 or vote for LGBTQ rights, et cetera. And you know, they say a 4, I'm a 4 on that, or a 5 on that. And then you talk about that and you share your own stories about why are they there and where are you? And then at the end of the conversation, you revisit it and say, well, where are you now, you know, on that scale? And what's absolutely amazing, the race class narrative, or this deep canvassing strategy, has been researched very carefully and has been found to be 102 times, these conversations, 102 times more effective than traditional canvassing conversations, probably about 500 times more effective than texting. And what's really important about it is that the change in voter attitudes lasts. Because it comes from within. It's not top down telling people what they should believe and why they should believe it. It comes from within, and is a conversation that puts people in touch with their own values and beliefs. And so that's why it lasts. Somebody said, our friend Adam Krugel, who is the director of strategic initiatives, I think, for People's Action, said that he fields questions, sometimes slightly anxious questions. Well, what if the Republicans, sorry, let me go back there. What if the Republicans use deep canvassing? And he's like, well, that'd be cool if they could really tap reserves of empathy, you know, have at it. So here's some resources. I'll put these in chat, or we can just send out the slides, it's fine. So ianhaney-lopez.com. Race Class Academy. This is a set of, Race Class Academy is a set of a dozen, like 2 to 3 minute videos that inform you, instruct you in the structure of the race class narrative and how it works. And then one more name to know is Anat Shenker-Osorio. She is a communication strategist who's works closely with Ian Haney-Lopez on the race class narrative, and her URL is asocommunications.com. I'll also say that our illustrious chair, Chris Savage, has interviewed Anat Shenker-Osorio several times. And, you know, if you listen to podcasts, check out all of his conversations with her. And I think he's got a couple with Ian Haney-Lopez as well at the GOT MFV show. So once again, the Precinct Organizing Committee, Janet and I are co-chairs. We have Loretta, Brian, Ed, and Liz as very hardworking members, absolutely incredible team. And you can contact us at poc@washtenaw-dems.org. And again, I want to see Alex's name in this list. I hope you will say yes. That's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Theresa.
Alex.
I'd like to just jump in with one quick thing, which is that another part of what's been going on with us is sort of an ongoing debate as to how we intersect with outreach, which is a team that is still trying to get built. We have Caroline Sanders, who's just amazing, but unfortunately we have lost Marcy, who was her partner. And that's a whole program which really needs to be built. And sort of the question is, where do we draw the line between voter mobilization and, as Alex was saying, we need to be showing that we're actually bringing benefits, that democratic politics is not just voting and then top down, but also what benefits can we bring into communities. So that's really an ongoing discussion, and we invite people to contact us about it.
Yeah, ditto.
Thank you. I would like now to open the floor up to questions or comments. So if you would please use the raised hand function. I'm not sure who you are, but it's smcopy@Yahoo. And I've unmuted you. Let's see. You should be able to talk.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, I guess, Alex and Janet and Theresa, for your presentations. And it kind of led me to think what
Actually,
you were saying, Alex, that
identify yourself, because we can't really
this
tell.
is Sam Copy. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank
Janet
you.
knows me, but yeah, this is Sam Copy. I live in the 2nd Ward. I was a precinct delegate in 4-3 last cycle, not this current cycle. But it seems like, I mean, when I went to a precinct delegate organizing committee meeting, just one, and I guess at that point, I didn't realize it was the main outreach part, but it just seems that the precinct delegate organizing committee could do more to help various local groups of organizers help organize their communities. It shouldn't be the county party going in. It should be helping people in various neighborhoods build up local organizations, whether it's 1 or 2 organizers, but I shouldn't be going into another community. I should learn how to organize my community, and I can offer insights, but our model shouldn't be to go organize a neighborhood without anyone on the ground. The model should be to go in and help a community or neighborhood organize. And I don't think it's productive to have certain areas of the county, certain neighborhoods going into other neighborhoods, but it should be good to uplift all neighborhoods. And within a neighborhood, people know what their issues are. And I don't know what the best model is to connect those issues with the rest, but that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'd like to speak to that for a moment. I totally agree with that. Maybe you should be on the precinct organizing committee too, but I totally agree with that. And what Janet had mentioned about, for one thing, so precinct delegates could exist all over the county. I mean, every precinct can have more than one precinct delegate. So as I was saying, we're trying to recruit precinct delegates to take on that role and be the voice, in the community that feeds back to the county party and tells us what's needed, how can we actually help, and so forth. So I guess I'll leave that. And I see Alex has his.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The only thing that I would add on to, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, that had made the great insight. Sam. I'd 100% agree with Sam. What I'd add on, what I'd add on is just in terms of attempting to do that, follow the need. There's no shortage of need, and find people in those areas. I think a lot of times, sometimes in the political area locally, we rely too much on the faith community as far as indicating what's going on in the greater community. But having said that, there's some great churches today at Grace Fellowship Church in Sugarbrook. They're doing a food pantry. Groups that are doing and connecting and providing services already, like Sam was talking about, helping them. And then, unfortunately, there's such a great amount of need that by developing those authentic relationships, fulfilling that need, I mean, we're going to be here. We're starting, apparently the party wants to re-engage in a different way and start now. This is an opportunity. We're going to be here. Just start small and build with those, and make strong, authentic ties in those areas.
Thank you very much. I've been asked just to indicate how many people are in the queue and also how large this meeting is. We have 57 participants right now. And there are 2 people in queue. I was told that Marlon Wilkinson wanted to ask a question. And I have permitted you to unmute yourself if you would care to ask. And then we have Jim McCarter. So Marlon, would you please unmute yourself and ask your question? Or perhaps I'm supposed to ask.
Yes, hello, Marlon Whitaker here. I was interested in the talk about precinct delegates because I don't believe there was a precinct delegate on the ballot in my precinct. And I was just wondering how these precinct delegates get appointed when there's no one to vote for. And how do we find out who they are?
You can find out who they are at the county clerk's office. And that's also how you find out. So go to the Washtenaw County Clerk, and you'll dig around or search for precinct delegates, and you'll find the list of precinct delegates. It's possible that no precinct delegate was on your ballot because we didn't have people to run in every precinct. So that's entirely possible. And we really do want to build those ranks. So, I guess I would have to say that I don't think we were entirely on top of how to recruit in the last couple years. Maybe I don't want to say that because I'm new to this role, and so I don't want to speak ill of anybody else's effort because everybody's been working super, super hard. But just that we will be reaching out in new ways to find candidates for those slots for sure. And then also, if I'm sure on the county clerk site, you can find out how to get your name on the ballot. It's not hard.
Do those seats just stay open then? They're just vacant?
Yeah.
They're
open.
The next.
Well, yes, we elect PDs every 2 years. We're trying to see if there's a possibility of appointing some PDs by the county party. And, Chris Savage has asked the MDP for an opinion on this several times over the last few weeks and has gotten no definitive response. But we think maybe we can appoint, but in the meantime, we're going to really mobilize precinct volunteers and, to take some of that weight.
Thank you.
Did I answer you,
On
Marlon?
that one.
Thank you.
And I believe we did get the response that we can only appoint them for certain conventions, but we can't put anybody in on a regular basis until the next election.
Oh, okay.
But that doesn't mean that people can't fill that same role, simply call themselves a precinct volunteer or organizer and begin to build exactly that, take that role and then prepare to be elected on the next round.
Yeah, that's exactly
and I would just
right.
like to also say that this kind of thing, the awareness of functions in a county party is something that spreads gradually. I mean, we made huge efforts, and the people before us made huge efforts as well to use through Facebook, through the newsletter, by talking to people, but there's always many more people who don't even know that there's a county party than that do. So it's an ongoing work in progress.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Loretta, you have a question. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't a question, more of a comment. I'm sorry. I didn't know I should raise my hand. But anyway, regarding the precinct delegates, I appreciate the questions about being a precinct delegate. And we are, in the history of my time and being a precinct organizing committee, we worked really, really hard in letting people know about the opportunity to be a precinct delegate. And people don't come. People don't, people don't necessarily want to, especially if you're talking about actually running, which you don't really run. You put your name on the ballot and a lot of times you just get elected. Okay, but that's just the first part of it. The next part is you really have to do the work, just like Theresa said, we work hard in these things. We meet every week, to come up with ways in which we can be more effective in the Democratic Party. So it's not just putting your name on it. And when people understand it, when they know that, they shy away from it. It's the same thing like in the church. 80% of the people, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Okay, I work as a precinct delegate. I'm on the precinct organizing committee. I work with you guys on programming. I'm not tooting my horn. I'm just saying that there's a lot of need out here. We do need people to do it, and we could find them. If you guys know them, know where they're at, what they want to do. If they want to do, we will go get them. I will drive my car to wherever need to be and pick them up, and help them. We don't have any compunction and bringing people in. So just let us know where they're at. We'll go get them. We're working hard to make it happen. Don't think any way other.
Thank you so much, Loretta. Desiree Simmons, I'm going to unmute you. Let's see. I'm getting a message, Desiree. A lot of talk is not available because you're using an older version of Zoom. I'm gonna have to promote you to a panelist. Okay, I'm gonna promote you to a panelist. I guess there is more ways to handle this. So you should be a panelist now, Desiree, and you may ask your question. And you're unmuted.
Great, thanks. The power of a Chromebook on Zoom. Anyhow, good to see y'all. Anyhow, I had a question about when talking about the deep canvassing, and I was just wondering, I know We the People Michigan have been doing a lot of deep canvassing work in the area, and I'm just wondering whether y'all had connected with them, kind of learned some of the lessons of what they were doing and what they were finding in this area. So just more wondering about that, because I know that they have put some resources into that here.
Yeah, our work has been with Michigan People's Campaign. I know We the People Michigan has been involved, but we haven't formally connected with them yet, although I did speak with, oh gosh, what's her name? I have spoken with several of the We the People organizers, but they were not able to be involved in I invited a couple to the deep canvassing planning team and they weren't able to. So to be honest, maybe Chris should speak to this. I'm not sure of what the relationship is between Michigan People's Campaign and We the People. It's, seems like there's a lot of overlap. And so I don't know what the relationship is. I know Chris is friends with Art Ray's of We the People. And I have been in touch with organizers there to join our work, but we haven't really connected, but we will. I think we should, right? We should share strategies and so forth.
Anyone else want to chime in on that? No, then Jim McCarter, you're Jim, I think you have to unmute yourself. You should be able to speak.
Got it. Thanks, Eli. Sorry, I was a little, my mousing is a little poor today. First, just an absolute shout out to the fact that we are so dependent on volunteers. And that's come up 4 different contexts in the last 5 minutes. Second, I would like very much to go back to the February 6th meeting and how everybody had this incredible response to that meeting. And if you remember, we got a challenge at the end of that meeting from those 5 incredible women to step up. And the specific ask was, take your money and your power, get Black people elected, use those resources to support Black individuals and families and communities in this county. And then in March, we focused on a specific way to do that, which was COVID equity. Alex worked really hard and had some tremendous connections to pull off what happened in West Willow. So I was so happy to see him when he popped up today, because that gives us some continuity to March. And now there's Desiree, who, is another outside connection with so many overlapping things here. What I would like to offer out is that the fundamental approach that will benefit the county in the long run is to ask the community what it wants and stand beside and behind, not try to take over. So when Alex talks about that huge potential population of voters in Ypsi Township, we as a party need to absolutely honor that information and say, okay, what do you need from us? What do you want from us? In the short term, that's COVID. COVID is life or death. But in the longer term, as Alex is a high preacher of the longer term, we need to focus on the needs of the communities that he is a representative for. and then say, okay, how can we help? If we're going to do deep canvassing, one of the lessons from deep canvassing was non-transactional. So how do we translate that into using deep canvassing? So that was a long-winded way of turning around a question. I would ask all of the panelists, how can we as a party be responsive in these areas to the needs of the community in order to raise, in the long run, our visibility, our participation in precinct delegates, our value to the community, and then the votes will follow. So how can we do that?
I just want to know, Loretta has said on chat, deep canvassing in capitals. So I guess that's emphatic. Anyone else?
I think understanding the important issues in those areas and educating people about them and authentically connecting with them. Ypsilanti Township has an investigation by the Fair Housing Center against it for housing discrimination. Many people don't know that. Superior Township has a history of not keeping proper minutes, and a whole host of other issues. A portion of Superior Township wants to break off and call itself Ann Arbor. Pittsfield Township, I mentioned those apartments earlier. Those are congregate dwellings. Housing, renters pay taxes also. You could do tenant education. You could do COVID outreach in those areas. But I mean, it's just, even if I took the maps off, any longtime residents of Washtenaw County, they know where the areas are. You know, you could, I mean, just let your imagination run wild as how, and really, your imagination needs to run wild. We can't be attached to this same status quo way of doing outreach and networks and everything. You know, that definition of insanity, we have to do something different. So let your imagination run wild. Go to those areas that you know that money probably wouldn't be seen in after dark, but go and figure out, you know, how you can connect and start doing it.
Yeah, I would add to that how we're doing this is what I was talking about in the whole precinct organizing presentation part, and what Janet has mentioned in terms of voice. What does voice stand for again? Visibility, outreach, something in community engagement, and that's a new committee that's, you know, got to get up on its wheels, and that will work hand in hand with precinct organizing to establish really solid relationships. And as Loretta said, we need volunteers from the neighborhoods. I agree with what everybody says about, you know, people coming in from outside and saying, here, I'm here to help, isn't as effective as building relationships in the neighborhoods. So, you know, that's what we're working on. And that's a long-term process. Kathy Wyatt, whom the sheriff shouted out recently, I mean, when he spoke, has been doing this for years with the WCDP. And so Kathy is a great resource as well. Alex, begin.
Anyone else care to chime in on this?
I'll jump in quickly as well. I think part of the conversation here needs to be listening. I think sometimes we are too quick to jump in with, with other aspects of our platform, like what we want to do, how we can help people, all that stuff. But like, I think the first step oftentimes is just listening to people. And I don't know that we do a good job of that as Democrats sometimes. And, you know, we have to create the spaces for those conversations to happen. And they don't happen in our typical spaces. We need to make ourselves uncomfortable and do things in a way that engages those voters that are maybe even people that aren't voters yet. But we just need to listen to what their concerns are, and we need to then act on what we hear, or else people aren't going to trust us. So I just wanted to put that out there too.
Yeah, and let me get my video back up. There we go. One of the things that I keep hearing is that we have resources and we have segments of the public, the voting public, that cries out for the use of those resources. And I have to recognize that we live in a world of limited resources. If we had enough, if we had plenty of everything, we wouldn't have any problems. But what we need to do is learn how to allocate those resources in terms of door to door, in terms of persuasion, in terms of canvassing, and everything that we do in the way that makes it, unfortunately, most productive. We may not be able to get to every place. The objective function of the party is to try and win elections and do that so we can make changes in the way things work. So we need to pay attention to the fact that we have limited resources, and we need to think about how we really allocate those resources across a real big, broad range of needs.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on that question? No, I do not see any other hands raised. Are there any other questions from the audience? I do not see hands going up. Jim, you wanted to add something?
I don't have anything special.
Thanks, Eli. Yeah,
different, Jim.
I don't think I have the ability to post for attendees. I posted for the panelists a link, which is the
Teresa's going to spread that. So
okay. Well, just so that people know what it is, Theresa, thank you for that very much. She's about to post a bit.ly link that's a direct link into the sign-up form to become part of the WCDP rapid response team to support pop-up clinics and vaccination equity.
Great.
So this is specifically targeted at the kind of thing that we did on the ground in West Willow. So I encourage you to click it, sign up. If you've already indicated your participation in a different way to me, I've already got you.
Great. Thanks, Jim. And I want to speak to something that Lisa Petrell has put in chat, which is super important. And that is the role of a PD not being, not necessarily like taking like top-down instructions from the party structure, but bringing it from the ground up. That is exactly what we're looking for. That is exactly because the PD is it's through PDs and precinct volunteers who aren't officially elected yet, how we learn, what are the needs? What do we need to do? How can we be more responsive? What do we need to funnel up to Yousef and Jeff and Debbie, so it's like the PDs and precinct volunteers are the ears on the ground to bring up through the ranks what the Democratic Party can do. So thank you, Lisa. Totally agree.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the audience or from the panel have any closing remarks or questions?
I'll say join us. POC@washtenaw.dems.org. I'll put it in chat.
I just want to briefly jump in here and mention and give a shout out to Gail Summerhill, because Ypsi Can I Share has done a lot of good work on what I was just talking about earlier around listening and engaging communities that, of people who sometimes have difficulty connecting with our party. I think it would have been good to hear from her too on a panel like this, and maybe she can be on future panels talking about this kind of stuff, because for example, a few years back, I had a town hall with her on my single payer universal healthcare bill. And she was able to bring out a population of people that I had never connected with, I had never spoken with. And she was able to do that in a way that really set up a conversation and an engagement with a brand new set of people that are interested in getting involved and understanding what their elected officials are doing for them. So there's a lot of creative ways to engage. And I just wanted to make sure to mention the work that they're doing in that sense as well.
Thank you. The programs committee will consider that. We are in touch. So it's a good suggestion. Any other questions? Actually, we have a question from Megan Biscamp through chat. How can UM students best engage with the WCDP, especially when they may only be in the county for a few years? Anyone care to field that?
I did in chat, and just saying that a few years is great. A few years, we'll take it. If anybody can join up and work for 6 months, let alone a few years. So,
and we're also really, this is Janet, we're looking forward to collaborating with 2 interns from the university who are going to be coming on this summer, and we might be able to manage another one if somebody's interested in that avenue.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Since we're making plugs here, I'm going to make a plug for the programs committee. I'm going to send a chat message to everyone. Let's see, with the email addresses of Satish Ramade and Loretta Codrington, who are the vice chairs of the committee. If you think other voices should be heard on this kind of program, then the programs committee is the place you should be, because essentially what people want to see happen on these occasions, if you're on the programs committee, it will happen. That's just how it works. So please consider signing up. Mike Henry says you should know that interns will be paid. So that's additional message. All right. Any other final comments from anyone? Going once, going twice. Then see, Jim, I'm not sure if that's a new hand or an old hand. Jim McCarter.
It's an old hand that I apologize for not lowering, but I'll note that Des is raising her physical hand. And Des, I connect with you through ICPJ, and that's why I cited your outside connection. So I apologize for the internal omission.
Thank you.
So Des wants to speak.
Okay, then I think you're a panelist, Desiree, so you can simply speak and unmute yourself and speak.
Great, thanks. Thanks for that, Jim. I'm okay being an insider, outsider, whatever is necessary. Don't matter. So, but what I was going to just say too is I think it's great kind of hearing about what's happening here in Washtenaw and recognizing that I think it's important to think about our work to just across the state and what it means for Michigan overall, and that as we're building out these resources, how that can be useful for other places that just because of how deeply blue we are, that these are resources that can then be shared in other places, and just thinking about ways that we can be doing that. Like I know for me, I think about, my work with the Progressive Caucus around the state and how we can be feeding some of these efforts and spreading them in other places that may not have as much support, but that will need to really make a difference at the state, the state level and at the federal level come the next time. So I don't know how much the county parties connect or collaborate like that, but I do think it's important in that because we have a lot of resources here, that's part of equity too, right? That we are sharing the resources that we have within Washtenaw and thinking about how they can be used and supported in other spots and places. And I know that's something that we've been talking a lot about within Ypsi Can I Share too, like how to spread this around the state. So I would say, any of these innovations, just keeping that in mind.
Thank you so much. I think I am now going to call the meeting to a close. I want to thank all the panelists for taking the time to speak at this meeting, and the audience also for showing up and for sharing your views. Take care, and I guess I will see you in about a month.